Okay, good morning, Conversation 3 students. I want to just make sure everybody's on the same page here before I get into today's topic. Most of you are students who have already taken Conversation 1 and 2 with me or with somebody else. So if you've done it with me, then you know. Usually what I do is record a lecture on the day and then upload it that same day. Yesterday was Monday, and for some reason YouTube wasn't completing the processing stage of my videos that I uploaded. Took forever, and they didn't complete until the evening. So I'm hoping that issue won't happen today, but if it does, then there might be a delay in your access to this video. But don't panic, because every Tuesday our lectures start, okay? So the timer starts at midnight on Monday. And so every Tuesday is the window until the next Monday, because March 1st was a very important holiday for Korean history, so nobody had class, right? So we got one day behind, and the lectures just got set up from Tuesday until the end of the semester. And I'm just gonna leave it like that. So Tuesday is your starting day for doing studying, even if your class is on Monday. But luckily for us, Conversation 2 falls on a Tuesday, so it's perfect. So every Tuesday, at some point during the day, there will be a recorded lecture available for you. As I pointed out, the first semester we had coronavirus, everything was recorded and there was no Zoom. Last semester, we did both, back and forth. And I think the consensus was among, especially you, students who were my freshmen, my online freshmen, first generation of online freshmen last year, the 2020 freshman group. You are the cohort that is used to doing online class for university. And so I appreciate your experience and hopefully your patience, because if you've taken my class Conversation 1 and Conversation 2 in the last 2 semesters, you probably realize that things go wrong sometimes. I've been sick on occasion, my microphone has been broken, I've had problems with the Korean system, my own website, or YouTube, and if any of those things goes wrong, there's sometimes a delay. So that's why we have a week window, and but I will attempt to deliver the lectures every Tuesday morning on time. So hopefully you'll consider that when you're waiting for the lecture. If it's not up, then usually some students email me and say, is something wrong? And usually there is something wrong. So if you just wait, probably it'll sort itself out within 24 hours. Otherwise, I will send you an email, or I'll put a notice. I'm teaching myself how to use the cyber campus, so I'll put a notice up for you. Okay, so that's the way things are gonna go. We are gonna do some Zoom lectures, but we're just gonna throw them in as kind of extra sessions, just to get everybody a chance to ask questions and to see each other, because there are a few things I want you to do with other students to practice speaking. But for now, we'll just get a few recorded lectures out of the way. You've seen, hopefully, on the cyber campus, by next Tuesday, you should hand in your self-introduction from the first lecture, which is the same as the Conversation 1 class. I just want to get some information about you. It doesn't have to be super personal or revealing. You don't have to tell me about your private life. Just tell me about your personality and why you want to study English, and maybe where you're living, if you're living in a dormitory in Gungdong, if you're living in another city or off campus in Daejeon with your family. This information is somewhat helpful to me, just so I know how you're accessing the class and whether you're available to come on campus if we ever want to do something on campus someday, if you're around or if you're not. Last semester, most of the students were pretty far away, so it wasn't reasonable to have any interaction on campus because it would take a 2-hour or 3-hour drive. So just tell me about yourself. Give me some, I want to know some details. So describe yourself in some detail, and it doesn't matter what part you focus on. Like I said, your family, your relationships, your personality, where you're from, why you're studying English, what your hobbies and interests are. That's all fine, as long as you demonstrate your English ability by using your vocabulary and grammar to express about yourself, okay? Now, the chapter, excuse me, the chapter, I'm not advertising here for Sprite, it just happens to be my drink of choice today. Sorry about that. Okay, so the topic today is don't worry, be happy. And there is a song that goes along with that. It starts off with a lot of whistling. And whenever I see that phrase, I just think of that song. Now, maybe I'll link it for you on the website so you can have a listen. It's a pretty old song, so you may or may not know it. But whistling is a signal to people that you're happy. And of course, laughing and smiling is too. That's how we normally judge whether somebody's happy. It's just by looking at their body language, especially the human face has a lot of expressive ability. You know, some psychologists try to count how many different expressions we have. It's something, there's a lot we can do. Acting is maybe one of the most human behaviors. Very few animals can play and perform the way a human can. So some dozens anyway of different expressions that you can show on your face. And a big number of them, more than the negative ones, signify positive things, especially happiness. So first question is, you have to decide what happiness is. Before you can explain whether you are happy or decide whether you're happy or not, as an adult, we try and figure out some kind of formula, to see whether we are happy or we should be happy or we shouldn't be happy, right? So there's a little quiz, and this is not meant to be some kind of benchmark for your happiness. This is just like to promote conversation. So don't take it too seriously. But go ahead and look at this happiness quiz and think about these questions and answers, right? If they make a difference to you. So number 1 says, according to research, happiness is hereditary, which means that if your parents are happy, you're happier. I think that makes sense, both environmentally and genetically, that certain people would have a genetic predisposition, as we say. I know that's a big word. It's predisposition just means that you're more likely to be something. It's not sort of programmed into you, but your genes are setting you up to be a certain way, and it's the probability of you being happy is higher, right? This is the way we talk in genetics, because it's not a perfect prediction, because there's always an interaction with your environment. But if your family environment is relatively happy and your parents are happy and so are your grandparents, there's a strong correlation between your happiness and theirs. And that's really what it's trying to say when it says hereditary. Could be hereditary is the most likely answer, because we haven't really decoded the way genetics work perfectly yet. But you can tell there's a relationship in the way people behave with their personality, as well as just their physical appearance, right? Okay, so genetics may have something to do with that. Depression has been linked to genetics, so why wouldn't happiness, right? Research shows that people in rich countries are happier or not happier than people in poor countries. Well, in general, wealthy countries have happier people, not surprisingly. There is a myth that people in poor countries are happier because they don't realize what they're missing. But that really is a myth. And we're talking about general, like large surveys of people. You could find a really, really happy person in a very poor, undeveloped country who had very little. That's entirely possible. But across the whole population, people that have access to education and clean water and health care, of course, they tend to be happier people. French, Irish, or Germans, people think of themselves as the world's happiest people. None of those are the right answer. So there's a clue right now. This book is not brand new, so at the time, I haven't actually looked up the date to match it up, but I do have some information about how happy people are. And I'm going to talk about Korea because this is where we study English in Korea. So it is nice to, I talk about Canadian culture sometimes because I'm Canadian. And I certainly talk about Korean culture because this university is in Korea. So even though we're studying in English, it's good to sort of understand the society that we are studying in. So on a daily basis, this is part of our life. So you think Korea belongs in there? Do Koreans think of themselves as the most happiest people in the world? They don't. Neither do Canadians, but I'll explain the difference in the attitude in a minute. According to one study, people feel happier on Fridays and Saturdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Sundays and Mondays. I imagine you can figure that one out for yourself because most people feel a similar general state of enthusiasm when it comes to TGIF, right? Thank goodness it's Friday. I know people say thank God here, but my grandmother always told me it's thank goodness, you know, it's proper. So you don't offend any traditional Christians. In the US, people think that April, August, or December is the happiest month of the year. Okay, this requires a little bit of research on your part to get the answers. Recent research on seasonal affective disorder, SAD, which is a sort of depression that affects people at certain times of the year, confirms the depressing effect that seasonal changes have on people short, dark, or cloudy days, or working days. Yeah, well, there's a dead giveaway there. It is something that the environment can really affect your attitude on a given day. And so if a person did take this survey and it was in the dead of winter and it was gray and cold outside, they'd be more likely to answer with a lower score. There's all kinds of factors that affect your happiness, though. It's something that you can't really break down. So just as I was explaining in my Conversation 1 class, it's very helpful to have some criteria, right? You can't just say, I'm happy or I'm not, because that doesn't really mean anything. You kind of have to have a list of about, maybe if you're trying to be really analytical and compare countries, you might have to have a list like they do online with the World Happiness Report. You may have to have a list of about 50 different things. So what you need to do is set some criteria. And I don't really want you to make this into a report. I want you to explain in a conversation, remember? So next week's homework is the introduction. 2 weeks later, I want you to hand in an answer about happiness, right? And there's a few sample questions here to get you going. The first question on chapter 1 at the top says, think about happiness and what words do you associate with happiness? So this is just a vocabulary association exercise. Vacation, friends, freedom, money. Money is a kind of slippery thing, but sometimes when you get some money for your birthday or something, a present, you can make a list of all kinds of things. Adjectives and nouns and verbs. Sports, in my case, make me happy. You just have to, this is a very flexible question. So, you can focus on descriptive things, or you can think of objects, or you can think of actions. There's no wrong answer as long as you explain how that's connected to happiness, right? So, with a partner here at the bottom, there's a little discussion question. With a partner, ask and answer these questions. How would you describe yourself? Are you a generally happy person? That's a pretty personal question there, but I think we can all sort of manage that. It's not too invasive. Which time of life do you think is happiest? Explain. Well, that's a difficult one when you're only 20 years old. How can you say that if you would be happier when you're 40, like me? But I can safely tell you that I was probably happiest when I was about 30, I would say, because I didn't realize when I was a kid, I was just happy all the time as far as I can remember, but I didn't really realize how hard life really was. So, when I had first become a professor in Chungnam, and I was pretty satisfied with my job, and I was learning how to improve my lectures and meeting a lot of students and other professors and new people. And I was young and energetic. I'm going to have to say my late 20s. I actually started at Chungnam when I was 27. So it's 12 years ago. About that time, I was really happy. And then I broke my leg and I was depressed for 6 months while my leg was broken. But that sort of relative experience, right? Now I realize that the first year I was at Chungnam was so great. I wasn't worn down or anything. I was fresh, and I had just gotten a job, and I realized I was going to be a professor. I was excited, and until I injured myself at the end of that year, the end of my first year in 2010, till I was in the hospital by myself, far away from my country. That was pretty happy relative to the situation afterwards. So you can put your happiness into context as well. And that's where people sometimes argue that you don't have to be in a super rich country. The richest countries are not the happiest. There's this strange effect, actually, I would call it strange, but unexpected maybe is a better word, that the Nordic countries, what we call the Nordic countries, which a long time ago had Vikings roaming around them, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Those are the Nordic countries. We sometimes call it Scandinavia, the peninsula of Sweden and Norway, with Denmark poking up from Germany. Those countries are almost always at the top of the list. And they are remarkable, one, because they're Nordic. They're far north. They have long winters that, according to seasonal affective disorder, should make you depressed. But they have much longer winters than us, and they have less sunlight. But they have very socialist systems. They have their countries have less of a wealth gap. There's less extremely rich and extremely poor people there, and their social security and their education is, managed by public systems. And this combination of development, education, and social programs, socialist type societies, they seem to produce generally more happiness than other countries. So even though countries like the United States or the United Arab Emirates or any number of other wealthy countries that have huge GDPs and make a lot of money per person, they are generally less happier than these particular countries. And you could throw in, Germany and Austria and some other European countries that are at similar levels, New Zealand, and they usually compete for the top 10 spots. It's usually a pretty solid group, and it's hard for the other countries to get close to them in terms of happiness. Like, it's not even close between the countries that are in the middle of the ranking and the people at the top. The scores are way higher. They're much more satisfied. And again, this is supposed to be a general opinion of the entire population. It doesn't mean the happiest person in the world lives in Finland. That doesn't matter. Okay, so in general, those countries are happier. So I want you to consider, when you're doing your homework, you can go whichever way you want. I make these questions open-ended by design, and those of you taking my conversation classes before know this. It's up to you to decide how you want to answer the question. I'm not asking you to agree with me or disagree with me. I'm not asking you to say yes or no. I'm asking you to come up with your own way of answering the question, okay? And then this is because this is normally what we do in English class. When you're writing, most professors, as you progress, as you get to your senior, year in your undergraduate, your professors will give you less and less specific direction when you're doing your homework. They will say, okay, look at this chapter in the book and tell me what you think about it, what's important, or criticize it, right? They don't tell you that you have to talk about a certain theme. You don't have to talk about images of love in Lady Oracle. I just chose Lady Oracle because that's the book I'm almost finished for my own classes. But you don't do that. You end up having some open-ended, you have some choice, and that makes it more fun to write. It makes it more fun to talk as well. When I give you the interview test, if you've got to memorize a certain type of answer, I think that's less realistic, first of all, because that's not the way real interviews work. But also, it's less interesting for you because you don't get to talk about what you want. So when it comes to happiness, it's an elusive thing. I can't get the words to roll off my tongue very well today. I messed up a few of them. Elusive, E-L-U-S-I-V-E. It's an elusive thing. Like, you might spend your whole life wondering if you were ever happy because you're always looking for it. And if you read any novels, serious novels, there's going to be some of the main characters go through the entire book and the entire story, and you're really not sure if they've had truly experienced happiness for the entire book. So hopefully that's not how you feel. Hopefully you can focus on certain things. Some people say it's good for you to focus on the small things. If you appreciate the little things in your life, you'll generally be more happy, right? Of course you're going to be disappointed sometimes, but if you don't take everything for granted, like if you just, if your mother makes you breakfast and every day, and you realize this is something that she's doing for you to show her love and because she cares about you, and you say, thank you, Mom, I love you, that can make both of you really happy, even though it's just a breakfast, right? It's not flying to Paris and having dinner on the Eiffel Tower. It's just breakfast at home. But sometimes it takes, going to university and not having, your mother's cooking around for you to realize that's something that made you happy. And now you're less happy. Okay? So you choose what you want. You can focus on small things or you can focus on big things. So I am going to put a link on the website. Just under the link to this video, there will be a link to, it's a whole bunch of data, basically, okay? And this is an English literature stream. So some people are from different disciplines. Some people are in business, and some people are in science and other things, right? It's always good, no matter which class you're in, to look for some evidence and some facts to back up what you're saying. So I'm doing that right now. I'm going to do that because otherwise it'd be like, well, professor, why do you have this opinion about how happy people are in these countries? Like, where does that come from? Well, I've met lots of people from those countries, but that is not a good way of measuring how happy the population of Finland is. If I had a friend named Tom, and I can't remember his family name, but I played soccer in high school. We had an exchange student from Finland in my high school. Super tall, blonde-haired guy, seemed pretty happy. Maybe he's a typical Finnish man. I have no idea. But that's not a good way to judge, 6 million people, certainly. So there are these organizations. There is an organization that manages the Global Happiness Report. And it does cities and countries. So first of all, let me just point something out in terms of wealth, right? Now there's different ways of measuring wealth. There's the total amount of money your country makes, and then there's the average amount of money people make. But even within that average, there's a lot of super rich people and a lot of poor people, the average balances out to a pretty high number. So you can see this in countries, for example, like the UAE, where it has a lot of very wealthy people and a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, not compared, but they do have a lot of rich people there, which sort of pushes the average, salary up. The GDP per capita gets pushed up. So you have to be careful of that. Even when the GDP per capita is high, sometimes it's not evenly distributed at all. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the conditions are good for each person. But anyway, the top 10 in terms of economies, they are United States, China, Japan, Germany, India, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Brazil, and Canada. That's the top 10. And we have in the top 10 happiest countries, 0 of those countries, right? So there you go. The richest countries are not the happiest countries because the list is completely different. The list of happiest countries goes Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland, Norway. I forgot Iceland. It's a Nordic country too. It's just off in the ocean, a ways away from the others. Excuse me. Iceland, Norway at 5, Netherlands at 6, Sweden at 7, New Zealand 8, Austria number 9, Luxembourg number 10. So they're all European countries except for New Zealand. And then at 11 and 12, you got Canada and Australia. Now Canada's the only one that's close to its economic ranking because it's 10th in economic rating and 11th in happiness. So there, I guess Canada's at the crossing point because the Americans always say we're socialist. We're not really, but we do have universal health care and we do have better welfare and health support, welfare programs and social security for our citizens. It is more comprehensive than America. So we are a kind of hybrid state there. And the United Kingdom is number 13, the UK, which people often complain that for some reason the United Kingdom has fallen out of grace and it's declined and everything. But United Kingdom is consistently at the top of the biggest economies in the world and consistently in the top 20 for happiness. So I guess there's a lot of happy people in the United Kingdom and a lot of grumpy people too, because all I see from English people is complaining about how their country isn't as good as it should be. Again, happiness is relative though. So Koreans maybe feel this kind of British sentiment too. Maybe the Koreans think their country should be better than it is and that there's something missing. I've heard lots of theories about that. So maybe you can use this in your writing if you choose to, if you want to ground it in your own culture, if you're from Korea, if you're from China or another country, Bangladesh or Uzbekistan, wherever you're from, somewhere in Europe. I've had students from everywhere and I didn't look carefully at the list, so that you could be from any country, but you're welcome to sort of explain what you think happiness is from your own perspective, what you think your culture values most and what is important for them to be happy. I've heard lots of Koreans say the main problem here is everybody's competitive. There's a lot of pressure on you from when you're very young. So, you don't get to enjoy your childhood as much as maybe some other people from other places do. There's very high expectations and you compare yourself to other people so much that you always think everybody else has it better. And that makes you less happy. If you're always looking at your neighbor and how well your neighbor's son is doing in school or what nice clothes they have or they've got a brand new car and you don't, this would make you less happy. And if you were asked about how happy and content you are about your life, you would probably answer with lower scores. And I feel like that might be an aspect of Korean life that makes you less happy. Of course, being super competitive has made Korea develop very quickly. and that is a benefit. But it depends on what you really want, right? Do you want to be the most technologically advanced country, the most educated country, the most powerful country, the richest country? And is that going to make you the happiest country? The evidence says no. So if you're going for happiness, then maybe we should put some more value on other things. It's just a suggestion. So Korea is 12th in economies, and I have to go deeper in the list here to find that actually it's not in the top 20. Usually Korea sits somewhere in the 40s in terms of how they rank in happiness. This PDF is taking a strangely long time to load. Must be a lot of data there. But Canada's 10th and actually this I should say the economies are outdated a little bit, so the coronavirus damaged a lot of these countries' economies, especially all of them except for China and Korea. So in the top 12 economies, there might be a little bit of movement there, depending on how well they managed. Korea did, as you know, very well on keeping the numbers down for the coronavirus. So our GDP shrank less. And this data is from 2019. So the entire order there may have changed. I can't get this to, I'm gonna have to share it. I'm gonna have to share it on the website. As far as I know, I've always seen over the last 5 years or so, Korea kind of bounces between the low 40s and the mid 40s in their ranking, which is really far off their economic ranking. Whereas Canada in 2019 was 10th in economy and 12th in happiness. Sorry, 10th in economy and 11th in happiness. Korea was 12th in economy and like 43 in happiness. So there's a big gap there. We should be happier than we are. So that's a question for you, if you can figure it out, if that's what you want to talk about. But there's a lot of variety of things you can talk about here. You can talk about health, right? Health can be related. Being healthy is sort of a prerequisite for being happy, right? If you're not healthy, it's pretty hard to be happy. Sick people tend to be less happy by nature. It's sometimes painful. On the next page, there's a whole bunch of exercises. They're related to activities and things that make people laugh. And there's some words, to describe reactions, like dying laughing or laughing your head off or saying something's hilarious. There's a variety there, okay? So there's a bunch of questions to consider. I would like you to sort of consolidate what you think about happiness. And in 2 weeks, you got to submit a file, a doc file or a PDF file, please, just like the first one. And you should be able to do it on the cyber campus, so there's no messiness with my email and trying to figure that out. Remember, if you do email me, please use your student number in the header or in the title somewhere, so that I can easily match who you are to the class list. Okay, and that's all for today. Please do your homework and keep up with the lessons, and I will see you again next Tuesday. Have a good day.